If Citroen is to return to its traditionalist roots, it needs a big, plush, comfort-orientated, quirky flagship model, which potentially is exactly what we've got with this car, the unusual but rather pleasing C5X. It's an unusual confection, but the right kind of customer might rather like it.
What if you can't decide between hatch, saloon, estate or SUV for your next family car? Well, Citroen doesn't think you should have to, and for proof offers you this, the C5X. Citroen has a long and distinguished history in larger models, from the traction avant and the DS of the 50s and 60s, to the CX of the 70s, the XM of the 90s, and more recently the equally quirky early 21st century C6. Unfortunately, few of these cars sold profitably, and even fewer lasted reliably, but at least they were memorable. Current brand owners, the Stellantis group, have no interest in nostalgia or in continuing to build large Citroens no one wants, so it was surprising in 2021 to see the introduction of this C5X. It owes its existence to a couple of things. First, there's the fact that China, where this car is assembled, is a market still keen on larger mainstream brand models of this sort. So Citroen doesn't have to depend on badge-obsessed Europeans for this contender's profitability. The second factor that got this model the green light was the multi-genre design approach we referenced earlier. Depending on your perspective, you might see it as either a luxury lift-back hatch, an estate, or some kind of crossover, or perhaps something else entirely. An unusual combination, certainly, but an approach that's been tried before, perhaps most notably with BMW's unsuccessful 3, 5 and 6 series Gran Turismo models. Here, it's been delivered once more on a car sharing a badge with a Passat sector model deleted a few years back for slow sales, the C5. From a brand with no history of success against the German premium makers who dominate the luxury car segment. You've got to cheer for the underdog, haven't you? And we rather like this one. A car with an X suffix referencing its market position at the crossroads of customers' needs, according to Citroen. Whether you need it is something you'll need this film to help you decide. As usual, it's the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test. Large Citroens have been prioritising comfort and refinement since before the last war, and it would be a disappointment were this C5X to be any different. The initial signs are certainly good. You sink into thick, armchair-like advanced comfort seats, and the engine springs into life almost inaudibly. So, will this be a big Citroen to savour? It would be nice if it was. So many family cars these days seem to a greater or lesser degree to feel the need to be sporty, something we often find perplexing given the practical needs of their owners and a public road network infested by enforcement cameras, speed humps and dozy drivers that discourage sporty driving at every turn. In the last few years, Citroen has been rediscovering what used to be its unique selling point, cars designed for just the opposite approach. In days gone by, the brand delivered that by dispensing with springs and dampers and instead suspending its larger cars on cylinders filled with oil and nitrogen. Rivals dismissed this hydractive hydro-pneumatic setup as being expensive and unreliable, which it often was. And current marque owners Stellantis aren't about to return to it now. But Citroen has been permitted to continue with development of that system's simpler modern-day replacement, its clever progressive hydraulic cushion setup. Here, the usual everyday spring and damper suspension arrangement has been reimagined in a rather clever way. In ordinary cars, such a system usually works with rubber bump stops that the suspension coil crashes against over bumps at the top and bottom of wheel travel. The progressive hydraulic cushion setup replaces these stops with hydraulic dampers. These cushion those impacts over things like speed humps and tarmac tears, and allow the fitment of softer springs and dampers, producing the exemplary ride quality that Citroen claims this car can deliver. This setup can't match the torrid tarmac serenity of an expensive air suspension system, but we found it works well in this model's C5 Aircross SUV showroom stablemate. So well, in fact, that in driving that car, we've often wondered how good progressive hydraulic cushion damping could be matched with the active scan suspension system that close cousin brand DS uses. With that, a system of sensors scan and evaluate the condition of the road surface as you drive, preparing the springs for bumps and undulations before you reach them. The C5X duly gets those two clever systems combined, though only in its heaviest, priciest plug-in hybrid form. That's not what we have here. Our test car instead propelled by a 130 horsepower version of the conventional 1.2 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol PureTech unit that seems to sustain a large part of the Stellantis Group empire, and is paired non-negotiably to the 8-speed ACIN auto gearbox that all versions of this Citroen must have. The engineers haven't got around to adding in mild hybrid tech to this engine yet, though they will do shortly, but you don't really miss the fractional electric boost that will give you, possibly because this car is lighter than you might expect and the engine doesn't mind a good rev, as would be required if you were to match the quoted 10.4 second 0 to 62 mile an hour sprint time accessed in the most urgent of the 3 available drive modes, Sport, the other 2 being, predictably, Normal and Eco. That's dispatched en route to the kind of 130 mile an hour top speed that'll soon be a distant memory as restricted EV power plants become the norm. There's no full EV drivetrain available here, just the 1.6 litre 4-cylinder plug-in hybrid petrol unit we referenced before, available only in the highest 225 horsepower output that Stellantis engineering offers. With that, the performance figures improved to 7.9 seconds and 145 miles an hour, but the C5X doesn't actually feel all that much faster because with PHEV tech on board, it's having to carry around 304 kilograms of extra ballast. You might feel it unnecessary to be carrying around the extra weight of 3 baby Asian elephants in your C5X just to get a best case EAER rated EV driving range of 39 miles from the system's 12.4 kilowatt hour battery. If you did, we wouldn't blame you, particularly given the substantial price premium required for the 225 horsepower electrified model, which gets its own distinct drive mode settings: hybrid, comfort, sport and electric, the latter promising full battery motoring at speeds of up to 84 miles an hour. As mentioned earlier, that PHEV version's extra outlay does also get you the more sophisticated Advanced Comfort Active suspension system we referenced before, but that rather has its hands full dealing with all the extra weight, so never feels quite as isolating as you hope it's going to be. Which means you won't be losing all that much by sticking with the passive version of the progressive hydraulic cushion system on this simpler PureTech model. It lacks the floaty feel of older hydro-pneumatic Citroens, but that felt a little weird anyway. With this car, the difference is that you know the bumps, manhole covers and speed humps are there, you just don't feel them to the extent you'd expect to in a car of this size fitted with big 19-inch wheels, which is just enough to make this Citroen a rather lovely thing to travel in. Not everything's great, of course. As you'd expect from the comments we made earlier, it doesn't much like being thrown around. This car's drive demeanour is all about lowering the heartbeat rather than raising it. Paddle shifters are provided behind the steering wheel, but you'll rarely be minded to use them. Hard cornering is discouraged by the rather lifeless level of steering response you get in return, but if you push on through this, there's actually a surprising amount of grip and traction available, nor is body roll quite as acute as you might expect. Probably a more important factor to note is this car's tendency towards a slight lurching motion forward at low congested speeds, when the C5X doesn't always accelerate as smoothly as it should. But that's eased away if in traffic you use this left-hand steering wheel spoke button to activate the highway integrated assist system that most models have, whereupon the car takes care of throttle, braking and positional duties for you. Get to the highway and class-leading refinement embellishes this Citroen's calming drive experience, even when you're pushing on in this PureTech model, which must indicate an awful lot of sound-deadening material beneath the bonnet, because we don't remember this engine feeling this quiet in other Stellantis models. The acoustic windscreen also helps, joined on this top-spec version by acoustic glass for the side windows too. All of which leaves us, well, where? Is the audience in the family segment now mature enough to accept that ride rather than handling should be the preferred primary dynamic trait for a car of this kind? Probably not, but with this C5X, Citroen has tried to change the game anyway. Sleek, chic and beautifully refined, it wafts its occupants with a composure you wouldn't expect its largely conventional underpinnings to be able to deliver, ironing away the trials and tribulations of the roads they must travel. There has to be a place for that. Well, it looks a bit different, doesn't it? Depending on your perspective and what angle you view it from, this is either a crossover, a big estate, or a luxury large hatch. The looks and the interior are inspired by the CX Experience concept car of 2016, but all the engineering underneath is based on the usual Stellantis Group EMP2 chassis underpinnings. From the side, that pleasantly confusing design brief melds into something you might find quite appealing. There's the stretched 4.8 metre profile of a sports estate and the bigger 19-inch wheels with black clad arches that you'd find, together with a higher ride height and a contrast-coloured roof, on a modern lifestyle SUV. Yet, at the same time, there's the coupe-style sloping rear roof and high waistline of a luxury lift-back hatch, all quite upmarket. You certainly wouldn't guess that the windscreen and the front door glass are shared with a humbler Peugeot 308. A Citroen-esque touch is this horizontal-lined blind-style C-pillar cover, a nod to the old BX, and hybrid models are designated by a little badge below the black wing mirrors. The front, as you've seen, has plenty of overtaking presence, with bold chrome central chevrons that extend outwards to emphasise the width of the car, flowing into this V-shaped LED light signature. Smart light vanes create a graphic chevron design in the headlamps to reinforce their illuminated signature, particularly from a front three-quarter view. More chevrons feature beneath the upper daytime running light strips and across this lower grille, and the wide bonnet has subtle scoops on either side. There's plenty going on at the rear too, where designer Frédéric Angibaud has decided that the steeply raked tailgate needs two spoilers, both black finished. The upper winged one is for aerodynamics, while the lower one is more for braking stability. Unfortunately, he hasn't decided this hatch needs a rear wiper, which you'll find as annoying on cold, misty mornings as we did. An almost equally strange decision, given this car's upmarket aspirations, is not to paint the bumper, presented instead in utilitarian black plastic, which presumably Citroen sees as being SUV-like. Fortunately, there are enough 3D lighting theatrics to distract you further up, where another V-shaped LED lamp arrangement echoes the theme of the front. The lower reflectors are underscored in silver, and there are some nice little touches, like the washer jet on the rear view camera. But does it all amount to little more than a Peugeot 508 in a more unusual set of clothes? Well, you won't think so once you take a seat inside, where the brand has tried, with some success, to make things a little different. For For a start, the seating position is surprisingly commanding, set 10 centimetres higher than it would be in a conventional D-segment saloon or estate. Whether it's all truly Citroen-esque is another question. The plump seats, the unusual three-spoke wheel and the digital speedo graphics try to be, but ultimately there are just too many shared Stellantis group parts, primarily the centre screen and much of the switchgear, to make this spacious-feeling cabin a true quality match for premium brand models. It's not without appeal, though. This smart, light wood-style central trimming strip that widens into the doors, the pleasing soft-touch textures of the dash top and the grey chevron-stitched faux leather door panels all please. Just try and ignore the cheap-feeling column stalks or the gear shifter borrowed from a Citroen e-Berlingo van. The seats we mentioned, as usual with a modern Citroen of this size, are of the advanced comfort kind, which means that they feature particularly broad bases, foam that's 15mm thicker than usual for extra support, plus extra quilted padding to create an inviting visual signature that doesn't disappoint once you squish yourself into place. Upholstery is in either faux leather or, as in this case, real leather, depending on trim, and there's standard lumbar support too. There's not much side support, but the way this car's designed to be driven, you're not going to need that much. What's important is that these plump pews brilliantly replicate the kind of feeling of cosseting Gaelic luxury that affordable Citroens of the 60s and 70s used to offer. Colour-coordinated stitching across the seat shoulder line adds a smart finishing touch, and on this top version you can add cooling and a massage function if you'd like. In comparison, the front chairs you get in rivals are dull and unyielding. Here you'll really notice a difference. Earlier we referenced the instrument binnacle screen's retro speed digit graphics, supposed to be reminiscent of those on the rotating drum speedo of a 70 CX. They sit on a strange 7-inch screen, which even with the ambient backlighting you get above base trim is a bit of a black hole if you've set the display in its minimalist layout. That's one of 4 themes you can select by clicking on the end of the left-hand indicator stalk. The others prioritise mapping, drive assist features, or a curious little circular rev counter, which is the only thing resembling a gauge that this display offers. The graphics would be laughed at by a premium German brand, but they work well enough, particularly on the head-up display, which is standard above entry-level trim and is the best we've tried on any car, with useful mapping built into the eHUD projection. A click on the end of the right-hand stalk embellishes it with trip computer data. The centre screen, of either 10 or 12 inches in size, depending on spec, is of the fresh generation of Stellantis Group infotainment monitors that offer over-the-air updates and allow you to customise the home screen with various widgets. Here on the larger of the 2 displays, we've got a TomTom nav map, audio and phone sections, and a so-called application drawer which connects you to everything else, including the 4G Wi-Fi, the 8-speaker hi-fi, and the mirror screen, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wireless phone mirroring system. It includes a climate menu too, though fortunately there are also physical controls for that further down the centre stack. We like the fact that there's a ledge to rest your finger on while you're working out which part of the screen to tap, and that there are physical controls for the volume and the home and vehicle buttons. We're less keen on the voice control system. Citroen says you can ask it quite complex things like, do I need an umbrella tomorrow in London to get a weather report, or turn on the passenger heated seat. It's also supposed to connect to the navigation and phone systems and control your music, though we couldn't get it to do something as simple as finding a favourite radio station. The system works via the command, "Hello Citroen." Cabin storage is a bit of a mixed bag too. The cup holders should be covered, the door bins are narrow and shallow, and there's no overhead sunglasses compartment. Plus, on this test car at least, the catch button for the glove box sticks, though at least when you open it, the space within, which includes an inner compartment, isn't compromised by a fuse box in the way it has been with most Citroens we've tried over the last decade. This large covered illuminated bin at the base of the centre stack has a USB-C port and a 12-volt socket, plus on most models a phone charging mat too. A twin lidded bin with an inner illuminated USB-C port sits between the seats, with a phone-sized stowage cubby just ahead of it, and there are ticket slots by your right knee and more clips for them on the sun visors. We mentioned the quite commanding seating position earlier. Well, you'll need that because all-round visibility is less than perfect, thanks to thick front A-pillars and the swooping coupe-like rear roofline. So you'll be needing the standard all-round parking sensors and rear-view camera, which this top-spec model is upgraded to surround view status. If you're seduced by this design's whole Gaelic vibe, you might be disappointed to learn that, like its close cousin, the DS9, this C5X is actually screwed together in China. Still, in this case, that appears to be a good thing because, with the exception of that glove box lid we mentioned, everything else here appears to be manufactured to a standard considerably higher than any Citroen we've previously tried. We also approve of the absence of fiddly, touch-sensitive surfaces of the sort rival Volkswagen Group brands currently favour. Like other Citroens and Peugeots of this kind, though, there's rather too much gloss black trim that'll quickly smear up, get scratched, or become covered with hairs. Designer Pierre Leclerc says that the C5X is a car you'll not only want to drive, but also one you'll want to be driven in as well. Well, let's see how the rear seat facilitates that. This Citroen's third generation EMP2 platform has been stretched as far as it will possibly go, and the result is a relatively lengthy 2,785mm wheelbase that should deliver a comfortable amount of rear seat space. That swept-back roofline doesn't compromise entry too much. But perhaps inevitably, once you're inside, it does affect headroom, though only for 6-footers. Lanky folk won't want for leg space, though. The knee room you get back here is a match for the Skoda Octavia, which means that it's very impressive indeed. We'd hope that the rear of this car might replicate the vibe of the old Citroen C6, which could be had with lovely TGV high-speed train style individual rear seats with electric sliding and reclining mechanisms, or at least failing that, the sliding and reclining rear seat arrangement from the closely related C5 Aircross SUV. In the event, the C5X's conventionally fixed rear bench serves up neither, so it won't suit French ministerial types wanting to relax in the rear with a copy of Paris Match as they're whisked down the Champs-Élysées. On the plus side, and like many models in this class, it would be possible to cram in a centre-seated adult without too much discomfort, who'd appreciate the notably low centre transmission tunnel. Not so good are the headrests, which are of the sort that dig uncomfortably into your shoulder until you raise them. You might also object to the fact that the optional glass roof doesn't extend far enough back to benefit those at the rear, and that the Isofix child seat brackets are awkward to access behind zips and obscured by vegan leather. The rear 3-zone climate system and B-pillar vents you might hope for in the rear of a large Citroen are missing, and you don't get overhead coat hooks either. But the upholstery and door card finish feels plush, and there's an airy feel thanks to these large rear quarter-light windows. Practical touches include beady overhead side reading lights, a fold-down armrest with cup holders and a pen tray, decent door bins and seat back pockets. While between the front seats are twin centre vents with a cubby below that. Above base trim, Citroen adds a couple of USB-C ports here as well. Let's finish as usual with a look out back. Now, you have to stretch right up to top spectrum to get this motorised tailgate, which is a pity as it's rather heavy. Once it raises, you're faced with a load compartment that resembles that of an estate car, thanks to its apparently vast size and these 4 luggage runners embedded into the floor. Citroen says that this space would take a refrigerator, though it'd have to be a very specifically sized one because closer inspection reveals that the luggage area, though usefully square, is somewhat shallow. Plus, on this top spec variant, it's accessed by an impractically stainless steel trimmed lip, which will quickly scuff and scratch. The actual space you get depends on the kind of powertrain you ordered. With this test car's conventional engine, there's 545 litres available, a figure which falls to 485 with the plug-in hybrid version. in size terms, that puts the capacity on offer here somewhere between what you get in a comparable Peugeot 508 SW and 308 SW estate, the 508 station wagon being, strangely, the smaller load lugger of the two. The cargo area size reduction of the C5X in hybrid form is due, as usual with PHEVs, to the need for battery pack placement beneath the floor. Mind you, there isn't much space beneath the floor, even with this PureTech engine version, though with this conventional powertrain, you can pay extra for a spare wheel. The roller tonneau cassette, the cover for which is of the flimsy fabric variety, looks as if it would fit under here though, but in a remarkable oversight, hasn't been designed to. On the plus side, there are the usual tie-down points. You get a light on the right, and you can widen the cargo area for, say, a set of golf clubs by lifting up this right-hand side panel. Plus, there's a ski hatch for longer items, and if you avoid base trim, there's a 12-volt socket here too, on the left. Flattening the rear seat back is done via these cargo sidewall catches, though the backrests don't fold down anywhere near flat. The space freed up, though, 1,640 litres here, or 1,580 with the hybrid, should be sufficient for the needs of most owners. There's a simple range on offer here, and we'll give you the pricing for it that applied at the time of our test in autumn 2022. You choose either the conventional PureTech 130 petrol engine we're trying here, priced from around £28,000, or the petrol plug-in hybrid 225 variant, which costs from around £37,000. Either way, you have to have an E88 auto gearbox, and there's a choice of 3 trim levels: Sense Plus, Shine, or, as in this case, Shine Plus. Citroen has resisted the temptation to bring in a diesel. Its 1.6 conventional petrol engine or the PHEV powertrain in more affordable 180 horsepower guise. Competitor comparisons here are difficult because this car could fit into so many genres, hatch, estate or SUV being perhaps the most obvious ones. The £30,000 budget required for a conventional C5X doesn't buy you much these days in any of these categories, so whatever your preferred model of reference, it's likely that this big Citroen is going to look decent value against it. This contender's price matched quite closely against Peugeot's smaller 308 SW estate. That brand's 508 SW estate is about £4,000 more, as is a Peugeot we think to be a little closer in concept to the C5X, the 408. But this Citroen feels a more unusual confection than one of those. Its Gallic vibe perhaps closer to another unusual Stellantis Group model sharing the same engineering, the DS9 Saloon, though one of those only comes in plug-in hybrid form and, at the time of filming, was priced right up at around £53,000. Otherwise, it's difficult to think of cars that really hit this Citroen sweet spot. A little less, around £26,000, would get you a Hyundai i30 Fastback or a Renault Arcana, but those are smaller cars. Quite a lot more, upwards from around £40,000, would get you GT-style models like Audi's A5 Sportback and BMW's 4 Series Gran Coupe, or mid-sized coupe SUVs like Audi's Q5 Sportback or BMW's X4. But none of these cars have a design brief quite as ambitious as this C5X. An acquired taste, certainly, but there's nothing else in the segment quite like it. If you agree, then you're going to need to know just how generous the brand has been when it comes to standard equipment. So let's see. The base trim level, as mentioned earlier, is Sense Plus spec, and this includes a very reasonable amount by class standards. Even at this level in the range, C5X customers can expect 19-inch Aero X alloy wheels, automatically illuminating LED headlamps, LED front fog lamps, rear privacy glass, keyless entry, an acoustic windscreen, all-round parking sensors, roof rails and power folding mirrors. You can also tick off 3D LED rear lights, an alarm, auto wipers and cruise control with a speed limiter. Move inside at Sense Plus level and you'll find supportive advanced comfort seats as part of Citroen's Urban Grey Ambience interior pack, which gives you grey herringbone fabric and Isabella black leather effect upholstery. There's also soft LED interior lighting plus dual zone climate control, a 7-inch digital instrument binnacle display, a reversing camera, front seat lumbar adjustment and an electrochrome auto dimming rear view mirror. The 10-inch centre dash capacitive touchscreen includes My Citroen Drive navigation, an 8-speaker DAB audio system, Bluetooth and a mirror screen media connectivity function. This allows you to duplicate your phone handset's display onto the centre dash monitor. The setup wirelessly supporting the MirrorLink system for Android devices and Apple CarPlay for iPhones. The screen benefits from over-the-air updates and includes a voice recognition system. Plus, there's also the M Citroen app, which will allow you to remotely interact with your C5X via your smartphone. Most C5X customers, though, will probably start their perusal of the range from mid-level Shine trim, a variant which adds extra tinted rear quarter windows, satin chrome trim on the rear bumper, and diamond-cut finishing, onyx black paint and special inserts for the 19-inch wheels. Inside at this level, the cabin's upgraded with Citroen's Metropolitan Grey Ambience trimming pack, which gives you black Paloma leather finishing and leather effect upholstery in Isabella black and Nixon grey. At this level in the range, you get adaptive cruise control, the steering wheel is heated, there's a frameless rear view mirror, and Citroen also includes some extra charging features, a wireless phone charging mat, a 12-volt socket in the boot, and a couple of USB-C ports for rear seat folk. The instrument cluster screen gains ambience backlighting, and the central infotainment touchscreen is upgraded to a 12-inch unit. Plus, from Shine spec upwards, drivers also benefit from Citroen's extended head-up display that projects onto the windscreen, and quite a lot more camera and radar safety and drive assist technology, which we'll brief you on in a few moments. Shine Plus is the range-topping trim featuring here, which adds acoustic front-side window glass. Inside, the interior gets the brand's Hype Black Ambience pack, featuring real Mistral black Paloma leather upholstery with perforated chevron design patterns. The driver and front passenger seats come with power adjustment and heated functionality, and you can get a 360 vision panoramic surround view camera, a stainless steel boot sill and a motorised tailgate with hands-free access, while extra styling touches include aluminium door sill protectors and brushed aluminium effect pedals. Quite a lot of kit then, but there's still space on the spec sheet for lots of extras. We'd want the optional spare wheel, which you can't have on the hybrid, and customers for Base Sense Plus trim can add adaptive cruise control. You may want to look at some interior trimming options. With mid-range Shine spec, you can upgrade yourself to the real leather Hype Black Ambience trimming pack of this top Shine Plus version, plus heated front seats too, if you want them. If you've opted for this Shine Plus model, you'll be offered the chance to pay extra for the brand's ultimate Hype Adamantium package, which gives you two-tone black and adamantium leather, while also adding cooled ventilation and a multi-point massage system to the front advanced comfort seats. This top Shine Plus spec also gives you the option of paying more for some real niceties. An opening panoramic roof with a sunblind and an upgraded hi-fi system, which gains a subwoofer and a central dashboard speaker. Whatever kind of C5X you decide upon, bear in mind that you're probably going to have to pay your Citroen dealer more for your choice of paint colour, unless you opt for the metallic magnetic blue shade we have here, which is the only standard one. 4 other metallic colours and a single pearl white pearlescent shade are also available. Whichever one you choose, you'll also need to pay extra for the black bi-tone roof we have here if you want it, and for roof bars too if you need them. On to safety. Now, as you'd expect, there are all the usual things: twin front, side and curtain airbags, ISOFIX child seat fastenings and the usual electronic assistance for braking, traction and stability control. In addition, you'll want to know about the cutting-edge electronic radar-driven stuff, and there's plenty of it. All versions of this Citroen get a lane keep assist system that'll alert you if you drift out of lane on the highway, then applying subtle steering pressure to ease you back to where you ought to be. And forward collision warning, which alerts you if you're getting too close to the vehicle in front. Plus, of course, there's autonomous braking, an active safety brake system that detects hazards ahead and will apply the brakes if the driver doesn't react. We're disappointed to note, though, that with base trim, it's an old tech camera-controlled system that doesn't work at night, nor can it properly detect pedestrians or cyclists, which isn't really good enough. All versions of this C5X also come with high beam assist, which will automatically dip your headlights for you at night, and driver attention alert, which after 2 hours of driving at over 40 miles an hour, alerts you to take a restorative break. Plus, there's speed limit recognition, which pictures speed signs as you pass and displays them on the dash. More important still is the standard Citroen Connect Box Emergency and Assistance System, a package that'll automatically alert the emergency services with your exact location if the airbags go off. Avoid base spec and you get a bit more. There's a proper modern radar-controlled version of that active safety brake system, which can work at night and does properly detect pedestrians and cyclists. Plus, there are extended versions of the traffic sign recognition and speed limit recognition systems, the latter allowing you to link to an intelligent speed adaptation system, which suggests the recognised speed limits to the car's standard speed limiter. If set, there's then no danger of you exceeding a posted limit. There's also lane change assist, which will stop you from pulling out when there's a vehicle in your blind spot, and rear cross traffic alert, which alerts you to oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a space. We mentioned earlier that adaptive cruise control is fitted above base trim, which has a stop and go function using a radar to automatically regulate your cruising distance to the vehicle in front at motorway speeds, even to the extent of stopping, then seamlessly starting off again if necessary. Avoid base trim and your C5X will also come with Citroen's Highway Driver Assist System, which is the closest the brand can currently get to any kind of autonomous driving setup. In highway driving, it automatically regulates your speed, your position on the road and your distance to the vehicle in front. Though, you have to keep your hands on the wheel at all times and your wits about you, as the car will quickly revert full control back to you when road markings become less than clear. Older, larger Citroens were usually burdened down with weighty mechanics, so rarely delivered particularly class-competitive running costs. Things are, of course, very different with the lightweight platforms and drivetrains the brand uses in the modern era, and so it proves again here. Stellantis Group Engineering hasn't yet got around to introducing the mild hybrid technology you'd find with most of this car's rivals, but it doesn't seem to really need it. Though this is a bigger, more family-friendly conveyance than a compact Golf, Focus or Peugeot 308-sized hatch would be, helped by a relatively light 1.4-tonne curb weight, its running cost returns are only about 10% different to those you get with cars of that sort. Specifically, you're looking at up to 48.6 mpg on the combined cycle and up to 137 grams per kilometre of CO2 from this PureTech 130 model. Citroen's resisted the temptation to provide a diesel version of this car, so those set on ultimate frugality must turn their attention to the alternative C5X plug-in hybrid model, which, as we told you in our driving section, uses the same higher output 225 horsepower version of that powertrain as the brand's C5 Aircross hybrid SUV. What the C5X hasn't, unfortunately, borrowed from the C5 Aircross Hybrid is that crossover model's latest 14.2 kilowatt-hour battery, which pushes up EV driving range just enough to ease that SUV into a more favourable 8% benefit-in-kind taxation band, which means that PHEV C5X motoring must be conducted with the brand's older tech 12.8 kilowatt-hour battery, the EV range of which can't crest the 40-mile barrier. Specifically, you're looking at up to 39 miles of EAER rated range. The The taxational effect of that is greater than you might think. At the time of this test in autumn 2022, the switch to the larger battery was saving a C5 Aircross hybrid customer almost £47 a month. That's for a 40% taxpayer in the 2022 to 2025 period. Still, the C5X plug-in hybrid's 12% BIK tax showing isn't to be sniffed at. Compare that to the 32% BIK rating of this conventional PureTech 130 model. Nor is its emissions stat up to 27 grams per kilometre. The combined cycle fuel figure is as preposterous as the readings for PHEVs usually are, officially quoted at up to 236.2 mpg on the combined cycle. In reality, once the EV range is used up, you'll average just under 40 mpg, perhaps while saving the battery charge for later in your trip when you might need it, a facility made possible by the system's eSave feature. Drivers can also adjust the car's regenerative braking mode, and when driving in electric mode using only the battery's charge, a cyan blue LED illuminates under the rear view mirror to indicate this Citroen's zero emissions status. From a household socket, the plug-in variant will be replenished in just over 7 hours, and unlike in a Peugeot 308 or Vauxhall Astra PHEV, Stellantis doesn't force you here to pay extra for an onboard charger with a proper 7.4 kilowatt output. Thanks to that, the battery will take only an hour and 55 minutes to be topped up from a typical garage wall box when using the supplied Type 2 charging cable from a 32 amp charge point. Annoyingly, Citroen does though want more for the 13 amp 3-pin domestic socket charging cable you'll need when either a wall box or a public charger aren't to hand. Using this, a full charge takes just under 8 hours. The plug-in hybrid C5X variants offer a thermal preconditioning function too. Via the My Citroen smartphone app or by using the vehicle's touchscreen, owners can schedule a wake-up time for the battery. This means that the cells can be at the optimal temperature for efficiency from the time you start up. Plus, of course, the interior can also be pre-cooled or preheated as well. And of course, you can schedule charge times to coincide with lower cost electricity tariffs. The PHEV battery is warranted for 8 years or 100,000 miles at 70% of its charging capacity. Of course, running costs are about a lot more than just fuel economy and CO2 readings, so what else are you going to need to know? Well, service intervals for both engines are every 20,000 miles or once a year, whichever comes first. So you can budget ahead. The French maker offers its Citroen maintenance scheme that lets you pay either a one-off fee or monthly instalments to cover the cost of the routine upkeep of your car for as long as 3 years and 35,000 miles. Every C5X comes with a 3-year and 60,000 mile warranty. The first 2 years of that aren't subject to any mileage limits, but the third year, which is taken care of by your local dealer, is limited to 60,000 miles. There's also Europe-wide breakdown assistance included from new for the first year you own the car. Looking at the longer term, you'll also have a 12-year guarantee against rust and 36 months cover for any paintwork defects, though that doesn't include stone chips and other wear and tear damage. Residual values shouldn't fall off a cliff like previous large Citroens, plus this one is better value than most of its rivals to start with. Finally, insurance groups. The PureTech 130 model is rated at Group 20E or 21E if you avoid base trim. The plug-in hybrid version's rated at Group 30E or 31E if you avoid base trim. The first year VED tax rate on the PureTech 130 is £230. For the plug-in hybrid, it's £0. Take a good look at this Citroen C5X. Outside of France, you're not likely to see many, which is strange because this car actually delivers a lot of what plenty of people look for in a model of this size, all in a very well-priced, extremely versatile package. It's not sporty, it doesn't want to be, and it doesn't need to be. That's refreshing. There's a welcome spark of originality here too. with elegance, comfort, efficiency and style, translated into a car designed to suit a family executive seeking something just a little out of the ordinary. All the truly great large Citroens of the past took this path, but they were always also marked out by the groundbreaking innovations they introduced. Everything here, though, we've seen before. The multi-genre style concept from BMW, the engineering from Peugeot, the suspension system from DS. Combining all of that, though, does create an undeniably pleasing Gallic confection, and even if the exterior design approach is derivative, it's been delivered with a flair of a puff of Gauloise. Let almost everyone else in the sector sign on the dotted line for something dull and probably German. Instead of that, go and try one of these. Be different, just as Citroen is now once more trying to be.